Recording. Back to
Hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya 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 hey yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College Uki Ebino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi piano yo yo wata pebi hagi ktabi ikhashia ya bino hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ha yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey ha ya hey yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College Ugi Ebino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi piano yo yo wata pebi hagi ktabi ikhachia ya bino hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya yo hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ya hey ha ya hey yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College Uki Ebino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka piano yo yo wata pebi hagi ikhachia ya bino hey yo hey yo ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ya hey ya hey yo hey yo Fort Beck Community College Uki Ebino yo yo me too gashi dagush kashka yogi piano yo yo wata pebi hagi ktabi ikhachia ya bino hey yo
Mitaku Yapi. Oka. É uma tia Capdo. Elijah Hopkins Demier. Kodye Unspemiche Makiapdo. Hello, relatives. Welcome again to the Buffalo Chasers podcast. Elijah Hopkins, joined with
Who's
Mr.
this?
Dekshi Earl Bullhead, is in the house.
I'm
Our
on a
our
podcast
third
right now.
amigo,
Where you calling from?
Mr. Tommy Christian, is unable to join us today. He has some
Well,
professional
I'm on
development.
a podcast right now, so
Professional development that he's
let me leave it.
He's
Unless you want to talk to Dad. Here,
So
I'm
before
sorry.
we get started on our programming here, I want to thank everybody for joining us on Facebook and on the webinar here. We have several students and some employees joining us on the webinar here. But Dekshi Earl, if you could share a prayer with us, get us started in a good way, if you could, please.
Oh. Why talk up stay honey on here? I cook you ahead. What's this you chavish? I could chow. Ugla carbonich vantash. Wina it hook up here. Ochika or tagapcha. Oyaki quacky here. At the Ukachnik of them. It's always customary to render a prayer or a song, and we have good thoughts, have a good friendship with each other. These are things were taught to us from times we were small kids. And through it, we learn a lot of words. But I'd like to share with you some prayer and a song that I have been meaning to share with others. But a lot of our children and kids here are needing encouragement, so I need to find the strengths, and I'll be doing so with a prayer and song. So listen carefully. This is a time of the year when we start gathering together more and more as we come in from the hot weather to cold weather, and it's like an early fall. And the songs, I see a need to share it because I work with kids, and oftentimes I see a need for them to be able to learn these things so they can pass them on to the next generation. But there's a lot of confusion and a lot of need for understanding, and I've always did my best to try to put it into a song. So so if you learn to sing it, learn it, share it, that's a good thing. So Atkakashla Wakantaka, Nehoye, Olon Yakaka, Echila, so he Anagopna, Natawakena, Ucheka Onicha, Ewushikche, Mukupiapia, or Anagopta Kokashla and Ocean Piapia. Takwe eche chayelo mitakuye ko tewa khela ko o te khikelo o te khikecha le michiena chewa kiyayo ukashela takwe chechayelo kakasuese chekon tewa khilafon o te sikecha lehemichiena chewa kiyaelo atukashla umashikelo. Ushich chile uno akai blut kekash nachchi. Omasta keshaet hokashila. Wochike you hai blut chamakaki anahu. Now yato kit haki mushkich. Wochike haganach onana okiaya hokashila. Oye okaya cha mushikampe. O mitake wasta.
Oh, Opada Chiche. Beautiful prayer. So relatives, what we like to do before we start in on the discussion, whatever actually Earl wants to discuss here today, but we try to incentivize participation for those of you that are following us on Facebook. If you give us a like, a share, smash that love button, that gets your name in the weekly drawing. We have Kindle Fire tablets, and we also have Buffalo Chasers Letterman jacket. So you letter in Buffalo Chaser if you're the winner of that drawing. So that's how we incentivize participation. So we're on week number 51. So last week was number 50. And so there was 2 winners that we identified for a Buffalo Chaser jacket. The winner of that is Misty Daniels. Winner, chicken dinner. Congratulations, Misty. We also have a Kindle Fire tablet up for grabs. And the winner of that is Bob Marley. Bob Parsley. Winner, chicken dinner. Congratulations, Bob and Misty. You can retrieve those prizes at Student Services, the War Eagle Vision Building. If you're not in that local area, just give us a call, 406-768-6370, and give us your mailing address, and we'll hook you up. So I just wanted to share that, you guys. So, every week we're trying to come at you with some, I guess, mental health and some just good old-fashioned discussion with some few elders that like to share some things with us. And we've graciously asked them if they would come share with us, and they do so freely. So we want you to join our participation and join the discussion, I guess. So if you have any questions, put your questions or comments in the chat feature of the webinar and/or on Zoom or on a Facebook feed, and we'll do our best to address that. So with that, Earl, I'm not sure what you wanted to discuss today, but it seems like we always talk a lot about language stuff, family history, Wachipi, Daku Idukcha Ho.
Well, Dr. Blukchang, yeah, I thought that I'd kind of send that slide over to you and give you a taste of a presentation that we're going to be doing down at the Uswecha conference in October. We are scheduled on 7th and 8th. So if you're near the area, stop in, and it's going to be a first for us. And a project that we did this early summer, middle of summer, and how would you call it? Constructing a drum, in which was done so many years ago, prior to what you see today. So it'd be interesting to share the etiquette, protocol, and history of how all that came about. So if you're in the area, Taupo, it's going to be at the Rapid City. I think it's going to be at the Rancota to do Uswecha conference, language conference. We have representatives from all over South Dakota that teach culture and language in the schools. We have people that come in from Canada. So as we go through this, I'm going to give you a taste of how we constructed the drum as a project, and I thought it was pretty neat. So if we just hold each frame at the beginning, I can give a comment on each one of them and kind of get myself a little brushed up on what we're about to do next week. So the first thing you got to remember, the availability to do what came to us through a woman whose name was Wambadi Sintewi, and the dreams that occurred to her, and what they call the dream drum songs. And that established what we see today in what we do with our song and dance, our ceremonies, or all the different things that we do to honor each other at celebrations. But in the long run, we did not teach, or we were not taught, our generations about the history, where it all began and started. And so as I progressed in my what they call walking the red road. And in the nature of my personality, Nietzsche Ole, I was very curious about what that all made and where it came from. So as I start praying about it, wondering who do I talk to, who do I see, who would know this information, who could help me out. So oftentimes I would walk up to gentlemen and I would say, what was that song about? And I was surprised to hear, Sloashnilo, I don't really know. That's Nietzsche Hunters, talk to my dad. And so I visit them in Ijagwichamore, and they would said, I can't tell you really the details of it. She said, he said, and they leave the conversation as is. And so I said, gee, there's got to be something. And so as time went by, my missus is from Fort Totten. So I'm sitting at a celebration and I hear a song that sounds really familiar to what I've been listening to off the reel tapes from out of Washington, D.C. And I inquired, I said, hey, guys, I said, do you know what kind of song that was? And this local drum group said, I don't know. So, we don't know. And I heard a voice say, Choka Ahiapi. And those are another tribe singing a song. And Odong, he said, those are Dakota da Isante Hina Ichupi, those songs were boughten. And that made me curious. I said, so I sat and thought about it. Who said that? And so I asked one of the singers, I said, who's that guy sitting over there? And he said, he's a tribal historian. He knows a lot about history of the tribe. And so I went to over and introduce myself. And we got to visit and got to know each other as friends. And his name was Louis, last name Garcia. And I call him Dewey, kind of a personal thing, friendship thing. Anyway, we kid around a lot. Anyway, him, Raymond DeMelli, Ron Thies, and a guy named Johnson, when they were small, they were in Boy Scouts, and they would listen to these old records, Canon records, and listen to those songs, and they start, they start teaching themselves these songs, even, the translations and whatever thing that was available to them, and they became very good singers. And so there's evidence, and I have on recordings of them singing at Rosebud. And this woman made a comment that's really clear, and she said, "Why could those white guys can really sing good?" And these good gentlemen went on to do a lot of things as culturally related with their sacred books they wrote on sacred language and history that they obtained, and how they came to be in their positions as historians for Totten, Louis, and then Ron Thies becoming a professor, doctor over in Spearfish, and DeMelli becoming a writer. Johnson, I think he was a fireman. I met him once. But in that knowledge, knowing that there were things available, I ran into a book called The Dance Drum of the Ojibwa. And in it, there was information about the history of the coming of the dream drum. And so that's what I was going to talk to you about a little bit and get myself a little brushed up for the presentation next week. So the thing that you'll notice on the writing here is that the system we're writing, the E is supposed to be a C and so on, but it's because this is a whole different phonetical writing that was used nationally, world over, called the International Phonetic Association symbols. And they were done and used throughout the world, translating the Bible to different tribes throughout the world through missionary work, so they could teach their Christianity to the natives that were accepting that way of life. So it became worldwide used. And so when we try to produce these things through our computers, we run into glitches like this. But the pictures that I'm about to show you will kind of speak for themselves with the narration I'm about to put on it. So let's go to the next slide. Can you do that?
Yeah, can you see it?
So acknowledgements is always, acknowledgements is always a good thing. And there are many involved in this prior to me becoming curious enough to look into it. But the Isanti, when I first heard that word, I went around and I asked different people that I thought were knowledgeable. And in one time, they said it had to do with knives, that their trade items were knives, bone knives. Because every tribe had their trade items. And that was one of their specialties was isan, right? Which is a color of the bone that's used to make those knives. So that was one version I got. And so then I continued to keep looking, and I would ask different ones, and they all pretty much would kind of agree along with what I was telling them that I learned. And so one day, my historical advisor, my aunt, she said, "Wana le omani tuwaki kalana oya ki ekhaki wichanu he etakshani olei." She said, "What are you looking for talking to all these old people?" I said, "Isanti, etaksha khabe." Oh, she said, "Chan," she said, "Wanchashi mara," she said, "You should have asked me first." So I was all over the place. And here she said, "Ahani," she said, "Hina otigina takuyon kit kapi." They used to have earth lodges. They lived in earth lodges, the woodland. And that would be the Isanti. And that, for all matters, our break from the Isanti or the Dakota becoming Titwa, we were all part of that at one time. She said, so Toha, their lodges, rain or wind or something broke down some of the earth around the earth lodges. They would go to a place that was available and get that clay or that type of dirt and fill in those cracks. And in time, there would be large pieces of it, and then used to patch up their earth lodges. And so the word isan, all right? The isan is the color of, you can call it beige. It's the color of bone, like skull bone, that kind of not quite pure white, but kind of a yellowish kind of tint to it. So isan, so from a distance, if you've seen those earth lodges, all right, you would notice the color of those lodges. And so you would know those are Isanti and Dakotapi, And so when she told me that, then I started realizing, I said, there's a way in which you can learn these words by breaking them apart and keeping a holistic attitude. And so the beginnings for me came from that observation. And so when I start looking at and wondering about all the etiquette and protocol and the questions I asked, I did not get a lot of clear answers from people. And so when Louis introduced me to this book, I used to read it. One time I read it by lantern, another time I read it in daylight, but I would go back to it, and I seen a lot of the questions I had and how they use tobacco, how they use societies, and that took part in these transfer of the dream drum to all the different communities. And so I became very engulfed in it. I became very interested in it because it was answering thoughts that I had. But I also remembered, well, if there was this drum, then where's the songs that go with it? And so that procedure and process kind of went downhill because without the songs, it does not really present itself the way it's supposed to. So I kind of let it go for a while. And one day after treatment, because what's his name, Kokai Naji came to my place, and he brought these recordings done in on an oral history project, and he brought me all these cassettes recorded off the wax cylinders in 1910 here on Standing Rock. And songs that they got 5 cents for, 10 cents for, and other times of real known songs and no more history of 25 cents. So those were all recorded into a phonograph, put on wax cylinders, converted to brass cylinders and archived in DC. Well, those tapes, all right, and he wrote to me and says, I know someday you'll do something with this. Because prior to that, I switched over to singing, 49 songs, Dahomey songs, love songs, and I was involved in that now. And so all of a sudden, one day I'm listening to it and I'm looking for Sundance songs out of the Densmore collection. Songs of the Teton, it's supposed to be, but they say Teton by Frances Densmore out of Red Wing, Minnesota. She did a study here. And so I started getting, and I said, well, I want to know about this. So I started listening to those tapes, put it through amplifiers, put it through, Dolby systems and trying to figure out what are they saying. And so the task was listening to, exposing myself to it all the time. Well, as I progressed and I started knowing that something isn't right here. The songs that are put on this tape, number one tape, do not coincide with the Sundance I've been hearing people sing. Because I would sing at a Sundance and start learning songs, and yet what these, according to the book, were not the tunes that went along with these songs written in the text. And so I said, well, the only way to approach this is to just listen to the first song and go from there. And so as time evolved, I went to college at the University of North Dakota, where I taught language, and I also went to school. Wasn't much, but I made it through. And anyway, when you study so much, your brain gets watery, And so when I was a little boy, one of the things we used to do is have a contest, and we try to catch those great big snowflakes with our tongue. So we'd have a contest, we jump up, stick our tongue out and try to catch that big snowflake, And so people around me at the college must have thought I was losing it, But that was, for some reason, I was attracted to it. And as that snowflake kind of floated down, it brought the word Ia, which means go. And then another one was Iaye, all right? It means go do it, Ho Iaye, go, So I said, hey, that kind of fits in and that part of it into that first tune on that tape. So I played hooky, I went back to my apartment, set it all up, and I start putting those words into that song. And it's called A Song of Departure. It's the first song of the Dream Drum. And it's astonishing what happened after that. And so I put it on a recording, and the president of the college who asked me to teach that at Standing Rock College, now Sitting Bull College, I said, and when he taught a class that students participated and never sang before, had little experience in it, and he played that tape at a big conference in Wisconsin, Green Bay, and he was beckoned to come to the announcer stand, and some old elderly gentleman was there, and he said, "Where did you get that tune? Where'd you get that song?" But I told the president at that time, "You take tobacco," and you explained to them the reason why we were doing this. And we wanted to preserve these things so that the younger generations will know about it, the history of it. Hence became the spirit of song, And so when he explained that to the old guy, he kind of shrugged it off. The next day they paged him back, and they came to him and said, "I understand what you're doing." And so that kind of opened awareness. And so I started getting into all the rest of the songs that are in there. And that came to us from that Wambadi Sintewe. So I'll give you a little example of how that song. Now remember, there was no chantet inza involved in these first songs. It was all a straight beat, you know. There was no chantet inza where you hit the drum, and that came with the big drum, 15 years after the dream drum, right? But these songs are still used for that purpose. They're straight up, you know. It sounds like this. It was. That became, and how would you say it, what they call the first song when a drum is journeying from one community to the next. And they started making this journey throughout the whole area where Native people wanted this ceremony, this drum to come. So the process and procedure for that is that there had to be a gift in exchange. The drum had to be constructed. The first drum, they tell us, was made out of an abandoned wash tub, military wash tub with deer hide. And the location, I haven't heard yet, but has been found where that lady had her dreams. So that procedural process took me to the next step or level to start figuring out these other songs. So what happened was, you know, whether it was a mistake or intentional, the dream drum songs were put in front of the Sundance songs, but were not chronologized number-wise. So that's where the confusion was. So once I figured that out, then I was pretty much at a level where I can start learning those songs, right? And so in the process as well, I said, wouldn't it be unique, right? And to take a look at what and how can we as a class, as students, construct one of these drums. So let's go to that slide and I'll show you that drum where the hammer is. Thanks for the assistance there, Elijah.
Wow.
Mashte Chano. Keys? He has them. Oh, gee. Okay, now, so Walata Vantas, you'll see that this, everything in the past was used for storage, you know, like grains and flour and things that were shipped. And so the first step was to look at it and see that the diameter, circumference, and where can we find these things? And so I happened to be in Bismarck and I seen these things sitting outside runnings. People use them for flower pots these days. I said, there is a barrel. And so I went and inquired with the supervisor and he went back to their storage facility and I looked in here. The whole inside was tarred. It was all black. And so I said, why is that all tarred and burnt like that? He said, this is how they cured whiskey. I said, what? They said, yeah. He said, this is how it gave it that flavor, that hickory flavor, whatever wood that was. So I said, well, I didn't know that. He said, but there are other uses for it because this is how they transported their goods, whether it was rice, beans, or peanuts, or whatever. And so I bought one and we took it and we went through the process of removing the rings, building the holes in it, measuring it, and then cleaning it up. We took it to a sandblaster in Bismarck. One of the students took it and they blasted the whole thing. They got all the charcoal out of the inside, clean it up really nice. And so this is the bottom half. So the barrel was already cut in half for making it a little easier for us. And the project that we're going to present next week, we had to cut it in half. So we had 2 drums there, and maybe make another one. So let's go to the next one. Now, the tools available these days made it a little easier for us. And back in the day, they just had a handsaw and they had a hammer and chisels and whatever. And so procedure began. And then they had nails that were square-headed on top and tapered to a point, you know? And so that would have been taking us a lot longer to construct it. So you see that donut that goes down to the bottom with a hole in the middle, that is to provide the resonance so that it don't, the back pressure just thumps it, you know? So it gets a resonance, it gets a nice ring. And then the laces on the side, they were used nails, they pounded in there. Didn't have screws then, like we do today. So we're kind of fortunate to be able to utilize those. So if you can see that board that they used, plywood, that they put inside there, had to be measured to fit correspondingly all around in the bottom. So it's not an easy task to get that measurement in there perfectly, but we did the best that we can. Okay, next one. Now, in order for work with a hide, we had to get a hide, and we tried to stay as close to the types of hide they used in those days. And so that meant a milk cow hide, Holstein, you know. Everybody had a milk cow those days, so availability was, so you can imagine what the bartering process they went through to get that hide. Because, I mean, they were cherishable because you got your cream, you got your milk, you got your beef and all that. So to be able to have a hide like that makes a good sound, a good resonance. They knew it from experience. So the top part is a scraper. You throw the hide over a tree branch, you peel all the bark off the tree branch, and use that scraper to take off all the washing, you know, the fat, the chalo, the meat. And then the bottom with the lacing on it, that is the forearm of a cow, or it could be a deer, it could be up. But then you use a stone to shape that end on the right side, so you can knock off the chop on the fat and meat to get that all loose. And they call that a wahinkpe, scraper. I made one of those. And to this day, I don't know whatever happened to it. So anyway, I made one just for demonstration purposes. So it was a lot of hard work. Students went through and they experienced it. Greasy hands and shoes get all wet and, you know, fat tissue all over, but they enjoyed it. Hands-on activity. It's a good way to learn. Okay, next one. Hope I'm not going too fast here. So as you can see, the process in which you hang it over and flesh it, the process takes a while. And the hide needs to be wet all the time. So you have to be careful of that. You can't just, so I'll come back and get that tomorrow. Well, I did that one time. I wanted to go to the celebration, so I took the cow hide, scraped all the meat off of it, fat, got it ready, put it down in the creek with rocks on it, soak in the water to get the hair to come loose. All right, about 3 days later, I came back and there the whole hide was gone.
Wow.
All that work I put to it, either coyotes or somebody found it and they took it. So I wasted a whole, 4 or 5 days wasted on hard work. So I learned my lesson. You do not leave the project alone. You got to make sure and finish it. So you can see that Mr. Baker here, very involved in the stretching and measurement of it. Okay. Now, soaking it and having somebody help you so they can learn how to do it is very important. It's too hard to try to do it yourself. The hide is heavy when it's wet. And the height that you have to put it up to work on, the scraping and time, it takes an effort from all those who participated. And so for us, for the first time, became relatively easy because they all wanted to participate. And we had 30 students in this class, you know? So you can see that the water hose is essential and getting it out flat, because now they're going to measure it. They're going to take the hub, so to speak, or casing, and they're going to measure it. So let's go to that. See, now you got the hide stretched out. You want to put the top, because in the barrel, the circumference in the middle barrel is wider than the bottom. So the bottom goes to the bottom, and you can see the inch on there, 32 inches, I believe, and the top 36. You stuck my eyes and it's good, but it looks like a 36 on top.
Yeah, 36 on top.
And as you can see, the dotted lines on there, that's where your lacing comes from. The same hide, the lacings. Nowadays, the availability that's there is you can choose from buffalo hide lacing, cowhide lacing, deer lacing. There's a wider variety of strip stitches you can use, but then you took it off the same hide. All right, so you had to cut it with a knife. You have to really be careful, because you need slip lights off, you'll cut yourself. So once these are all cut out, then the next process is, and you can see that the line in between, having it, you try to get as close to that as possible so you can start cutting it. And then you go around and you can see how the stripping goes together. And there's a way in which you link these hides together. And I showed in my classes how that's done. So you see how the measurements took place. Next one, look at. So now this is a single lacing. You know, the thick Holstein cowhide and the amount of lace, it was sufficient. All right. So, but you got to remember that there also has to be an air hole in there. Because if you don't put an air hole in there, when you hit the drum, the percussion of it, you know, doesn't resonate. It just goes plunk, plunk, you know. But also there's still moisture inside the drum that has to be aired out. So you, wherever the hole is, you put it on top so the air will rise out of the drum so it don't decay. If you don't do that, it's going to smell, you know. And so the utilizing is you learn from experience. Once you gain enough knowledge, you pretty much can figure out the tautness that you need to put on the drum. All right, so that's a single lacing. Nowadays, I see a lot that do double lacing, crisscross, and then we'll demonstrate that as we talk about that later on. So anyway, let's go to the next one. Now, it was very important back in those days to decorate the drum. And so they would make these chinas around it, representing their community, the designs on it, and how they, you know, how their philosophy is associated to the drum. So they would make it all the way around and make a nice little, how would you say, hand-sewed skirt, so to speak, for it, and cover up the lacings. And so it'd be decorative, nice to look at. Caparende, capisco, kafnala, or what, the corn sniff. And so now pretty much is left except for making sure that the drum hides are tightening straight up and down. If you leave one side too loose, it's going to go crooked. All right. So it all has, the tension has to be all pretty level all the way when you tighten it. Okay. Now the various designs and what they perceived and seen it, they painted or they drew these symbols on it. I'm not sure exactly where, but these photographs were taken from the dance drum of the Ojibwa book, the people that they worked with. And some of these drums I saw when I was in DC visiting Thomas Bennett Jr. You know, and when I first met him, I had interpretation of the songs that were on those tapes. And so I asked him if he knew them. And so he took out a hand drum, he started singing them. In our expression, we say, Kabbalah, they say, you know, kind of butchered the songs, you know, but I didn't say nothing. Didn't want to be disrespectful. He said, have you know, learned these songs? I said, I can sing you my version, what I think I hear, you know? And so I started singing them. And the first thing he said is, can I get a copy of it? And I said, these songs haven't been blessed, prayed over, and done in the right protocol yet. I said, so I would rather not hand them over to you at this time, but there will come a time when that will happen. So next one. Now, as you can see, these drums, different decorations on them. And then the one on the left, you see that the staffs are to hold the drum up in the air and to be suspended. And the reason being is that that drum was never to touch the ground. It's regarded as an entity, as a god. So it's always to be covered up with a blanket or preferably a white sheet in those days. You know, so the different kinds of hides that are on there produce different sounds. You can use cowhide, deer hide, elk hide, moose hide, bear hide, whatever is feasible. I've seen drums made out of bear, moose, goats, you know. I'm sure other countries have utilized what they have, but in this particular one, you can see that they're all raised off the ground. If it's an open door, they dig holes and put those posts in there. And then, so they brace the drum so it stays off the ground. That's because it's reverence you have in respect for the drum. Nowadays, we put mostly on blankets and wood stands, but that's because the convenience that we need to sit around it. So being part of that group, everything is put aside. Put your worries aside and you sit down in friendship. You don't allow nothing to be passed over the drum. There's a protocol etiquette, which we'll be presenting when we are down to the Swatch conference. Okay. Another one, here we go. So now these drums have made their way throughout the nation, and the prophecy of the Muhammadi Sitewi is that this is to reunite a red nation that would bring peace between the tribes, so that we all can have, you know, something that's going to be a part of our life, the heartbeat of a nation. And so you can see where all the places that it's been, especially in the Minnesota, Wisconsin area. You can see that these drums travel by train, by horse, carrying them, and they even appear up in Fort Totten and on into Newtown, Fort Berthold, and then up north, Standing Buffalo, in those areas. And it's far reaching now. They're even over in Europe and all those countries. When I actually Loamna, Wachipi, they have their powers over there now too. All right, so now you see that. Okay. Now, this is the gentleman that was recorded singing these songs for preservation purposes. And amongst these tribes, a very feared and renowned singer. To have memorized all those songs. And they used to use sticks to notch them so you can kind of keep track, because you had to change the songs appropriately for what was taking place, the type of honoring that was taking place. Whether you're honoring veterans or honoring marriages or birthdays or special events for accomplishments, you had to know what songs to sing for that. Even if you have to make them up yourself. It's a good experience. So it's a very well known, and it's an awesome job to be a drum keeper. And I go back and think about all the years I sat at the drum watching and taking care of it, and all the things I learned that came to me. That's a treasure. Okay. Now you can see a variety this one on the right side, that made it all the way up to Standing Buffalo, I think. Yeah. And you can see that the drum is not shaped like a barrel, but they utilize something else to me. But the concept and the practice of it's still there. And you can see that the other drums that are assembled, that are different involves drums that came to an event that where they all participated, put the drums together. And then the one on the bottom, I can see that it's representing directions, but the real insights to that, I'm not familiar with. But these were all photographs and things taken from the dance drum of the Ojibwa. Now, I have given some of these books when I had access to it to some of my friends that sing, and the first reaction is what does this book Ojibwa have to do with us? I said, read the book, study it. That's all I can say. See the Omahawachi, now the bustles and the leggings and the bells, and how your regalia was put together, the breechcloths and all that. That they did the best that they can with what you had to keep us strong. Look at. Tukidada, next one. So now you hear an example of the Thor direction poles, and then the accomplishments and things that they've done. Oftentimes they make a song, compose a song, you receive a feather for it, for families or veterans or organizations. And so they attach those feathers to those posts, to those staffs, so to speak, on drum staffs, you know. And you could see in the audience that these performances were done to educate people so they could see the other part of who we are, for how we maintain and were able to deal with all the trauma that took place amongst our people. It's a time of reconciliation, eh? And our songs are doing it for us. Our dances, what moves us is color, sound, and motion. That's our spirit. Now remember, there's also tobacco that's associated to this. So that has to be used to offer prayers for good thoughts around the drum. So you never pass nothing over the drum. No pop, no coffee, don't never throw nothing over it. There's a protocol. You pass everything around it. Pretty neat photograph. Look at. This particular photograph, I was really, when I first saw it, I said, wow, look at all those outfits, regalia, those trailers that they have and the feathers on there. This was taken in Omaha, and they call it grass dance. But amongst a lot of us who study it, we call it Omaha, or some say Omaha. So this dance continued to reach out to different parts of South Dakota, Omaha, all the way up the river, all coming up, and the songs that are associated with it. A lot of places have lost the songs, and some of them have retained it because they took them and put them into the doings, and they would reenact what they call branch carrying doings, where they made peace with each other. They were warring tribes, they used it to make peace with each other, because that was the prophecy. So when they had those big old get-togethers like in Omaha, World's Fair and all that kind of stuff, this was pretty much where people traveled to participate, you know? So that's a very unique picture. Okay. So you can see the craft work, the sewing that he had to do to put some symbolism into the drum and the carrying of it, the time it takes to be a drum keeper. So it's pretty neat, the contributions that these old guys made, so we can practice it and carry it on. Kind of, oftentimes I say, geez, so much that we weren't taught. We had to go find it for ourselves. But it's still better than nothing. Okay. Now, my uncle Bill Redfish was a singer amongst the community of Rock Creek, Bullhead, South Dakota. And one of the things that I always look forward to them is when they get together and sing. One time they had the drum sitting on a spare tire, and they put it inside a tire, and they'd use that for their drum stand. And they would kick them out, and man, they could raise the roof, you know. All those old songs they used to sing. And being a little boy, I danced to them, you know. And so I didn't care, you know. To me, it moved my spirit, so I danced to them. And I was taking a nap one time, and there, I woke up like that, and here, you know, them days, you know, it was, I don't know, it wasn't like it was today where people get really offended, but I woke up chola, you know, washing my clothes, didn't have much clothes. And here they were singing, so I started dancing, and my auntie and mom were just laughing because I had the gumption to do something like that. So I was getting into my moves, and man, they were singing good. There's a pot boiling stove with the door open, heat for the house. So I went into my backward move, and I put one of my cheeks on that hot door. Holy smokes, they sent me running, man. Laugh. But anyway, he was very influential in my life. My father was a grass dancer, liked to sing hymns in church. I like singing hymns. Don't get into as much as I'd like to, but he liked to sing in the church, and they used to raise the roof, the old guys. But Uncle Bill Redfish, he said, whenever the people ask you to sing, he said, do your best. Because when you get old and can't sing anymore, you can always look back and know that you've done your best. And that's where I'm at. I feel very complete that I've sang for many, many occasions for different people throughout the world, you know, and I've shared what I've learned in my life with people. And so when I think about how he said that, Tuake Tohan Uyate Oloan Nishipantash, Tankel na Washteste Ichumo. So Naha Toha Shala Niakte, Na Oloa Aki Tishni He Ahituana Soliankte, Takuku Ishtan Chanuki, He Washte Chanu. Those are the words he said to me when I was before he left this world. He's a veteran, World War veteran. He used to talk to me about all his exploits and war. So I have a deep respect for that, even though I'm not a veteran. I wasn't lucky enough or fortunate enough because I had a bad heart. But the effort I put into it, because I've lost so many friends who are veterans. So I close my eyes, I sing the song as best I can, and hope people enjoy it, you know. So I can sit back and listen to these young guys sing songs that are word for word, the way I translated them. It's a beautiful feeling that's being carried on, eh? So anyway, I thought this little bit would kind of inform everybody and give everybody a little idea about what we're going to be presenting. So if there's any questions and this and that, because it was brief run through. We haven't talked about the Huichaglata part of it yet, you know, and then the coming of the women participating in the power in the circle, and that wasn't allowed years ago. So a lot of it has been lost, but the archives, they're there. And people are, holy smokes, look at that, man.
Who made that? That chancheja.
Oh, shit, oh, man.
Man, yeah, that was
Oh, that's
yesterday.
cool.
We had Neil deGrasse come over here, and we got some pictures and you got some video of it. So we'll include that in that video for the Pooh sweatshop.
Ah, shit, oh.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice day for it, too. Look at that.
yeah, yeah.
Coloring, leaves coloring. Oh, wow.
Oh, huh.
Gosh, did it.
Well, we're
It's
about
already
at the
5:05.
Already 5:05. Time flies when you're having a good time. So, man, heck yeah. Very informative. I learned a lot. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So, yeah, I'll fix up with the PowerPoint. All those E's with that carrot stick above it. We'll fix it. And then we'll get prepped up for next week for your presentation. So anything else do you want to share, or should we shut it down?
When I'm getting my voice is getting starting to crack a little bit, coughing, drinking some tea to help, but my voice is kind of getting sore.
Probably a good time to shut it down. So relatives, thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you enjoyed the presentation today, and we'll be back at you next week sharing some more things. So Petu washte you hapo doksta ke wachia kapiktedo.
I watched it.
Hey ha ya hey ha ya hey ya hey yo hey yo hey yo hey ha ya hey ya hey ya hey yo hey